It's Harry spilling all the royalty. Let's get straight into today's video. Now, I had to go to 2 different bookstores in order to get a copy of this book here. It's so crazy popular. It feels like it's just flying off the shelves, but let's be honest. I'm gonna tell you whether or not it's actually worth your time and worth the read. I took a lot of notes for you guys, as you can see here. I didn't want to leave any tea not spilt, okay? However, I had very high expectations going into this book. Not because I normally keep up with the royals, I definitely do not, but because of how well done the Harry and Meghan documentary was done on Netflix. I really enjoyed it. I think there were 6 episodes. I watched all 6. And so once I heard this book was coming out, I had to get a copy, but unfortunately, it fell flat for me, and I will get into why. I went headfirst into this book. I didn't really think anything of it, given the page size here. I just kind of assumed it was gonna be filled with lots of information, but the font size is tiny. I had to bring out the glasses for this. Now, I don't know just how much I can show on YouTube, but I guess I'll just show a little glimpse here. You can see how small these words are. So I really struggled with trying to read all 400 pages of this because, well, I couldn't see it. This memoir is broken up into 3 parts. So we've got Harry's childhood, his military experience, and then Harry and Meghan. Let's start with the day Harry was born. The day of his birth, Charles came into the hospital room and looked at Diana and said, "Perfect, now you've given me an heir and a spare." And then he went off and spent the day with the notorious 3rd person in Charles and Diana's marriage, which is obviously Camilla, if anybody doesn't know. I think that really set the tone for Harry and Charles' relationship and just how strained it was going to be. Now, Harry writes in the memoir that he suspects his father was not prepared for being a father at all, let alone being a single parent. Also, within his childhood, he often discusses his relationship with Will, who it also seems like their relationship was quite strained as well. William, being the older sibling, told Harry while they were in boarding school, "Pretend like you don't know me. We are gonna be 2 separate people here, and that'll be that." I think when Harry lost his mom at the age of 12, that it hit him a lot harder because I think he was really traumatized and he just wanted some love and he wanted people around him that cared for him. But from the minute he was born, he was, I don't want to say fighting with the press, but dealing with the press, writing false stories with his family, leaking stories to the press. After Charles and Camilla were married, there were quite a bit of stories about Harry being the naughty boy, and fake stories about different things that he was doing that were being exaggerated for publishing, for clicks and views, and for money, essentially. Now, I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit because I'm talking about Harry's childhood, and now I'm gonna jump a little bit towards the end of the story, but I think that this offers a lot of clarity as to why the book fell flat for me. Now, towards the end, Harry talks about, well, he creates a similarity between his life and an old movie called The Truman Show. And in this movie, a production company adopts a little baby and they basically raise this child on a set with actors, but the child has no idea. He thinks this is real life, and they have kind of like a loosely written script, and everything that this child does is completed for content, essentially. So you kind of learn everything about this child, and it's honestly pretty cruel. And it made so much sense. I think that a light bulb clicked towards the end of the memoir because that's very similar to Harry. Granted, there are no real actors, well, outside of Meghan, but she doesn't really count in this scenario. There are no real actors kind of organizing Harry's life, but toward the end of the story, we learn that, well, I learned that Harry's finances and lots of things involved in his life, like even choosing a mate, he had to ask permission for, wearing a beard at his own wedding, he had to ask his grandmother for permission for, and even the outfit that he was going to wear for the wedding, he had to also gain approval from, I believe, his grandmother, if I remember correctly. And so it made so much sense why I felt like I was missing a lot from the book, because here you have this person who essentially the press has tracked him his entire life. And yeah, not everything in the press is entirely correct, but they've printed nearly everything about his life. Okay, so moving on to Harry's military experience, he talks about why he chose to become a soldier, and basically he just felt like it was the right thing for him. He struggled a little bit in school. He was considered to be the naughty boy when really he was probably just grieving the loss of his mother and grieving the fact that there was no one around him that truly felt like had his back. Harry really didn't deal with the loss of his mom. He truly believed that maybe she was faking her death and was in hiding and would come back for Will and Harry and take them off to some undisclosed location where he would be away from the press, because Harry, if you've seen the documentary, really does not like the press and feels that they are quite invasive. And reading the book, you can definitely get that. And also watching the documentary, you can see just the level of invasion into his life, and there was no privacy whatsoever. He mentioned that his mom was driving him and Will, and she all of a sudden turned up the music a little bit, started singing so the kids wouldn't notice that they were actually being followed by paparazzi. So when she hit the gas, they would not be alarmed. But she was truly trying to just protect her children. Now, what I found most particularly interesting about the book is that he often talks about his time in Africa and just how much he enjoyed spending time in Botswana more particularly. And there was one particular story that I really loved in here where he talks about running into an elephant. I think there was some sort of storm and they were going down a river in a boat. They saw an elephant that looked very sad next to an elephant that had passed away. I didn't realize that elephants were such emotional creatures. And so that you could tell even the way that he wrote it about the animals, the look in the animal's eyes. And I didn't know that elephants had funerals. So it's really quite interesting just to read about his experiences in Botswana. After the military section of the book, Harry gets straight into Harry and Meghan and how they met, their experiences in London, secret dates, and how they did long distance, more specifically. One instance where Harry and Meghan got into a bit of an argument, or not really an argument, it was more Harry was being mean to Meghan. She asked him if he had ever seen a man yell at a woman like that, and he replied, "Yes, I have." And they kind of talked it out and decided that the best course of action would be for Harry to explore some therapy. He also went into the wedding arrangements, which weren't too interesting. It seemed like a lot of weird things were happening though, and that some people did not want to communicate in terms of like minor things like Meghan's tiara and some bridesmaid dresses and a dress for Charlotte that needed alteration. None of this was too exciting. Honestly, I think that he was trying to get ahead of his family potentially releasing information and wanted the information to be in his own words and also for him to release it first. So after Harry starts therapy and things begin to now start going well for Harry and Meghan, again, getting back on the same page, Harry starts to realize just how popular Meghan and him are becoming. And he notices that they are quite popular, and he actually starts to draw some parallels between Meghan and Diana. Harry starts to become very nervous because he knows that in the past when Will and Kate were in their engagement, Charles told Will not to be more popular than him and Camilla. In fact, Charles wanted to change the spelling of Catherine's name from a C to a K. He felt that there were already two C's in the royal family, being Charles and Camilla. And so he wanted Kate to change her name to a K to basically not interfere, I guess, with Charles and Camilla's names. Mostly everyone in the family seems to be pretty toxic, starting with Charles and Camilla, going down to Will, and even Kate a little bit. There's a couple stories in there about Kate expressing that Meg hurt her feelings over relatively minor details. And so I think that kind of bled into Will and Harry's physical altercation, which Harry discusses in the book. He talks about how his brother actually threw him down and how Harry fell on a dog bowl, which broke, and the pieces went straight into his back and left some bruises and some scraping there. And Harry basically asked his brother to leave, and Will, before leaving, said, "Meg doesn't need to know about this." And I guess being that brotherly camaraderie or brotherly relationship, that Harry actually did keep this from Meghan, but the evidence was on his back. And of course she noticed. Meghan apparently cried, and then it was then that Harry realized that maybe some things needed to change within the royal family. He was nervous about history repeating itself. That's what he was mostly concerned about. So Harry created this entire document. It was a 5-step document. The first step being absolutely nothing changes. Harry stays in the royal family and works as such. All the way down to the 5th option, which the 5th option was leaving the royal family, dropping their titles, and just moving away. He didn't want that. He wanted to go in the middle route. So I believe it was step number 3 that was preferable, which was maybe working 6 months with the royal family and then moving away and living with his family separately for 6 months, away from the press and any sort of royal engagements. That's the option that Harry really wanted. However, the royal family was not happy to hear about that. Harry's grandmother, his father, and his brother, they all had a conversation, the 4 of them. And I think maybe there were a couple of security guards there as well, or maybe just advisors. And they did not like this arrangement at all. They thought it was an all or nothing experience. And so they strictly went for either step 1 or step 5, and that was that. Harry really didn't have a say if he didn't want to go for step 1, which was business as usual. And so they ended up deciding to just kind of kick them out and drop their titles and have them move away. Now, during this time, Harry was certain that his family would continue to pay for his security even despite leaving, but he was mistaken. His family decided to remove his security, leaving them basically abandoned. And this is the part where Harry started to panic a little bit. And not just a little bit, quite a bit. Even spoke to his security detail, who they did not like the idea of leaving Harry and Meghan alone either. They felt it was wildly unsafe, especially given all of the things that they were dealing with. And then also to add the racial element, even Boris Johnson at some point made some really nasty remarks about Meghan, and it was really bad. In fact, the security detail and most of the people who worked at the palace had never seen anything like it in terms of this sort of backlash. But anyways, getting back to the main story about security, Harry started to panic, and he started to look into opportunities to gain security outside of the palace. And it was going to cost him about $6 million a year to secure his family and ensure that they were going to be safe. Mind you, the press was wildly invasive. They would cut fences, they'd get these huge cameras, zoom in, get boats if they needed to. These people were relentless. So not having security was definitely not an option. Somehow, Tyler Perry offered up his house for Harry and Meghan to stay at for a couple of weeks, and even offered to pay for their security detail while they tried to figure things out. I think it was a real eye-opener for Harry as well, just to see just how toxic his family is. I think Harry's very brave in what he's done. He's really kind of breaking this cycle of toxicity. His family was often using him for headlines to create some sort of narrative about themselves, or to drive traffic away from unfavorable headlines about Will or about Camilla. It just seemed overall very, very negative, in a situation that Harry was going to have to leave. Now, this was a fun book. I liked reading it, but was it worth 400 pages? Honestly, in my opinion, no. I think you can probably skip it. Anything in here you honestly have probably read, or let's avoid the tabloids and the paparazzi and the press, because just how much Harry hated them, which I'm really grateful I never really got into those things because of just reading from his side of the story, just how invasive they are. But if you didn't, just go ahead and watch the documentary on Netflix. There's no reason to fully read this book. I mean, if you want to, go ahead and go for it, read his experiences if you're genuinely interested. But there wasn't that much new information that I learned reading this book. I would recommend, honestly, just watch the documentary and you can save yourself 400 pages. Or you could just listen to the audiobook. At least he actually reads his own audiobook, so that's pretty cool. But I think you can probably skip this one. Although I did enjoy it. It was my first memoir. I'd never read a memoir before, so I didn't really know what to expect going into this. But save yourself the time unless you're truly interested in the royal family. And that's all for today's video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.